We are in Daf Mem Aleph, and we're continuing to learn the laws of tzitzis. And it's quite interesting how so many laws that we take for granted, it's not clear exactly where they come from and technically what it really is, the mitzvah of tzitzis, as we'll see. So far we learned there's two parts of the mitzvah. You have the mitzvah of tchelis, which is the blue wool, and you have the mitzvah of the lavan, which we call the white wool, but doesn't necessarily mean white. It can be any color, but not the tchelis made out of the chilazim. So we're up to the Gemara over here. Tanarabban, we learned about 7-8 lines on top of the page. Tanarabban, we learned talis kfula. If you have a long talis like a poncho that goes to your back down to the floor, and in front of you it goes down to the floor. So what you did was you folded up the talis in half, and you put tzitzis in that midpoint there. They're the new corners. You didn't sew them or anything else. You just folded them. So this opinion says the Brayz says yichayim tzitzis, and Rabbi Shimon says you potter because it's not really the corner because you just open it up and suddenly it's no longer the corner. Vishavim, but everyone agrees in kafla of the tafra. If you actually folded it over and you wove it and you sewed it up together, then shayevis, then you are chayiv and tzitzis. Then you're chayiv. So the Gemara tafra, if you already wove it together, then pshita, isn't that obvious? And then if you sewed up, you fold it up and you sew it up, that's the new garment. So isn't it obvious that your chayiv tzitzis there in the corner? No, we needed the nokta besichi. That let's say that you sewed it, but the second pshat Rashi, you sewed it, but the threads are very, very far apart. So they're not really that permanent. They're not really that permanent. But what's bothering the Rishonim in this Gemara here is, it seems from here that if you sewed it, it's all right. Then you chayiv and tzitzis. But we learned just a couple of days ago that if, let's say, you have a four-cornered garment, and to avoid the mitzvah of tzitzis, you fold over a corner and you sew it up. We said, Lav Lamida, you didn't do anything because you can just cut the threads. If you really meant it, you would just cut it off. So before we said that just sewing something up doesn't make it permanent. And here we're saying you fold it in half and you sewed it up. It doesn't make it permanent. What's the difference? Rashi just alludes to that and doesn't really answer. So perhaps the difference is as follows. In our case, you're definitely chayiv at tzitzis. The question is geographically, where do you place the tzitzis? So if you sewed it up, since you're not creating or eliminating a chiv, you're just moving the place. So maybe sewing up is sufficient to say, well, for now, this is the place where the tzitzis go. In the previous case, you were chayiv at tzitzis, a four-cornered garment, and to avoid that, you decided to fold one up and sew it. You're trying to change the status regarding whether there's a chiv or not. And for that, sewing perhaps is not permanent enough to say that we're going to change the legal status that prior to this you would need four tzitzis. Now you tell me you sewed up one corner, so all you need is three. So maybe that's a difference. Says the Gemara further. Rabbi Barahuna Ikla once came to be Rabbi to the house of Rabbi Nachman. Once came to the house of Rabbi the Rabbi Nachman. Chazi saw that the mechaset towel is cool. He saw that he was wearing a towel that was bent over, folded over. The Rami lay chute iloye kfela, and he saw that the strings, the tzitzis, not hanging at the ends, but rather in the middle where you folded it over, which we just discussed. One opinion says yes. And then what happened was it opened up and unraveled it. The thing opened up this entire beged. And then now, when he put on the poncho, the string now is now in the middle of the garment. And because it wears it like a poncho, so the middle of the garment now is where his head is. Become lahadei. Suddenly the tzitzis were staying next to his head. Amalei. So he said to him, so Rabbi Baravuna said to him, Lav hainu kona of the kosach mana. This is not a cord. It says that you have to put tzitzis like kanfe big name on the cord. It's not a cord. It's right smack in the middle. But I said the Torah. So what did he do? Also he went shadya. He took it off himself because he wasn't wearing it properly. And he put on another pair to wear tzitzis, as if there's a chiyuv to wear tzitzis. In other words, as far as we know, the Torah says he happened to wear a four-cornered garment. Make sure you wear tzitzis. Here it seems that he actually felt there's a chiyuv to wear tzitzis every day, and which, by the way, there is midrabanan. And he went to switch another beged. Amalei, so the rabbi told him, we're going to have a discussion. The mitzvah of tzitzis, is that a mitzvah on the beged? You have a beged in your house of four corners. You have to put on a tzitzis, and it doesn't matter If you have 10 begodim, doesn't matter whether you're wearing it right now, you have to wear tzitzis. It's chayvus beged, it's on the beged. It's chayvus, the other expression is chayvus mana, the chayv of the keli, or is it chayvus gabra, a chayv on the person. If you happen to place on you a beged, a four corners, you have to put on tzitzis. So it's a chayv on the person. The fact that you went out, instead of repairing the beged, you decided to get another beged and wear it. So what are you saying? As far as the beged is concerned, okay, so the tzitzis are in the wrong place. Who cares? No, you're saying there's no mitzvah on the beged. The mitzvah is on the person. So you went and sought another beged to wear proper kosher talis cotton. So he said to him, "Mi savra, who told you chayvus gavru? It's an obligation on the person. Maybe chayvus talis was an obligation on the talis. In fact, it is an obligation on talis. And therefore, zil ramile, go and fix it up. Go fix up that puzzle, that talis that you put the tzitzit in the wrong place." So he was a lema, let's say, misayeh, there's a support to this view that the mitzvah is actually on the beged, because Hasidim, we learned this yesterday, Hasidim had a shayim, the early Hasidim, kimisha argu by shalish, the way we thought originally was at the beginning, but then we concluded they were knitting themselves a beged, weaving for themselves a beged. When it came to the very end of the beged, the fourth corner, in the last three fingers, because within the last three fingers is considered the corner, they didn't wait till they completed the beged. Matilim b'tcheles, right? They put on talis. Now, why would they have put on talis straight away? They put on tzitzis. They weren't yet going to wear it. It's not finished. They put it on because they felt that the beged itself, there's a chiv, an obligation on the beged to have tzitzis. So as soon as the beged is more or less ready, they decided to put on the beged. So we're Daf Mem Aleph, right in the middle of the page. So we're having a discussion whether tzitzis is an obligation on the beged or is an obligation on the person. And that means if it's on the beged, I don't care if you're wearing it or not wearing it. I don't care how many periods you have. They all require kosher tzitzis, like Rabba bar Rav Huna said to Rabba bar Rav Nachman. But so the Gemara wants us to bring a raya from him, from the Hasidim, that they were put on tzitzis straight away as soon as they got to the last corner, even though they weren't wearing it yet. That means the chiv on the beged. That's no proof. Shiny chassidim are known to be different. The mechamre and nafshai, they were always machmir, but they didn't necessarily have to. So more interesting. The malach, this argues with the malach, and there were stories of malach. The malach ashker of ketina, malach countered of ketina. The mechasia sadini was wearing linen, and we learned yesterday that linen does not require. Linen does not require chelis, because we said at the end we're scared you wear it at night, or you'll wear a beged that's a night beged, so there's no mitzvah tzitzis, and you'll think that you can wear klein. You'll have woolen tzitzis on it, and there's no mitzvah. It's nighttime, or because it's a night beged, even during the day. And since there's no mitzvah tzitzis, it doesn't push away the klein. A linen beged, and you have now woolen chelis, woolen tzitzis. So you saw this man wearing tzitzis. Menachos Daf, he was wearing this linen thing, and there was no tzitzis on it. No tzitzis. Big machlekes Rashi and Tam yesterday's Gemara whether sadim b'tzitzis means there's no tzitzis at all on it, or there's no tchelis on it, no wool, because you might become a client, but you could wear if it's not wool, wear other strings. Amalei said to him, so he either saw him without any tzitzis at all, without tchelis. Amalei ketina. Sadina bekaita. You always seem to avoid wearing tzitzis. In the summer, you wear this linen because it's thin and it's easy to wear. You don't sweat so much. And linen, you don't wear tzitzis. B'sarbola b'sisra, and you wear a coat in the winter when there's no corners. Tzitzis shel tcheles matela. So either the question is, what about tcheles? You never wear tcheles, or b'chal, you're not wearing tzitzis, and you're avoiding it. Amalei. He said to him, "An shito I say, why you're going to punish me? I didn't do a mitzvah that I had to do. Right now, the Gemara thinks there's an obligation from the Torah to wear tzitzis." And he says to him, "Okay, I should have worn tzitzis, but you're going to punish me? What are you so upset?" Maybe you won't get punished for an asay minashamayim. Down here below the court, we have a rule. I think said in Ksubis, somebody refuses to do a mitzvah, say they don't want to put on tefillin, or they don't want to make the bracha on lulav, but make the bracha koifin, you say achatei nafshe. You beat them until they die. But the heavenly court, will they punish if somebody doesn't do a mitzvah? Say, we're in Mem Aleph, about 20 lines at the bottom of the page. The beginning of the line is Ischan Shinan. We're talking about somebody who doesn't. Do you have to wear a talis cotton, or if you happen to have a beged, you put on tzitzis. So the Gemara says now. So we're having this argument whether the mitzvah is on the person or the mitzvah is on the beged. So the argument between a malach and Rabba Rav Huna. If you tell me the reason why he'll get punished is because there's a mitzvah to wear a beged, that's why Hashem punishes you if you don't, when he's angry. Why you didn't wear tzitzis? If you're going to tell me, don't do the person. It's a chiv on the beged to wear tzitzis. So if it's a chiv on the beged to wear tzitzis, then why should it be chayiv? I'm wearing a coat. I'm wearing things that are not chayiv in tzitzis. So what do you want? Why are you getting upset? It's no chiv on me with tzitzis, chiv on the beged. But I don't happen to own such a beged. For example, is there a mitzvah to buy a house in order to have a mezuzah? There's no mitzvah to buy a house. If you have a house, you put on a mezuzah. If you're hungry, you shecht. And is there a mitzvah to eat meat so that you can shecht an animal? There's no such thing. So the tzitzis also. If there's a mitzvah on the beged, well, I don't have such a beged, so what's the problem? But if there's a mitzvah on me, it makes sense. So the chayret shows that the malach holds that the mitzvah is on the person, not on the beged. Says the Gemara, so Elamai, so what do you want to argue? Chayv Gabri, it's a chiv on the person. Even so, there's no chiv mahatayra to go ahead and buy a pair of tzitzis and wear it. Mahatayra, the chiv is, if you happen to own a four-corner garment and you happen to put it on, you have a chiv of tzitzis. That's all. But there's no chiv to go buy it, or to make sure that you have a pair of tzitzis. So why is Hashem angry? So what do you gain? Why is the malach so upset? He the to obligate you if you happen to wear a towel. That's chayiv. If you're wearing a coat of things that don't have the four corners, you have a chiv to go ahead and what? And dafka wear a coat that has four corners. Now, the big machlekes Rashi takes what the conclusion is. Rashi learns Ella. Ella means that the Gemara says you're right. There's no proof for the malach one way or another, whether the chiv is on the person or the chiv is on the beged. But what the malach was saying is that tatztiki, your strategy is lemifter nafshach mitzitzis. Your strategy is whichever way you go, you're trying to avoid the mitzvah of tzitzis, and it's not appropriate to try to avoid a mitzvah. Whichever way you learn, the chayiv on the person, the chayiv on the beged, why don't you at least have one beged that has tzitzis? Seems you're trying to avoid it. Taisus learns we do not go. The word Ella means changing everything we said. Taisus admits the word Ella, and he says no. The Gemara concludes that the malach holds the mitzvahs on the person, and basically what the Gemara is saying here is, if the mitzvahs on the beged, there's no tightness whatsoever. You don't own a beged of four corners. What do you want? But if the mitzvah is on the person, it devolves on you as well. Then even though then it makes sense that you should try to put yourself in a situation that you should be chayiv, and the Eibusher will get angry at the time the Eibusher is angry, he'll be angry at you as well. In fact, Tosfos in Shabbos, in the first parak towards the end, learns from here and from Gemara Saita. Saita says that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go to Yisrael. Why do you want to go to Yisrael? Want to eat the fruits? Oh, you wanted to be able to do the mitzvah, trumas and maises and all that. So Tosfos means right from there and from here. There's a mitzvah to bring yourself to a situation where you can be chayiv in a mitzvah. And within that opinion itself, there are two opinions, whether that's mahatayra or that's midrabanan. That means even if you hold that whatever, but is that a mitzvah mahatayra? In fact, the argument goes even further. If there's a mitzvah mahatayra to put yourself in a situation to do mitzvahs, what about the mitzvah that we're talking about, the mitzvah drabanan? Is there a mitzvah mahatayra to put yourself in a situation to be able to do good things, including a mitzvah drabanan, or is it only mitzvah drabanan? So that's how Tosfos learns. Interesting, a malach should make the statement when a malach is tayra b'shamayim, and they try to work out. And we have no idea who this malach is, which is also interesting. Usually we say Eliyahu or some other name of a malach. Anyhow, the Gemara continues this very argument. We're continuing this discussion. Says the Gemara. Shmuel says, that a beged sitting inside a drawer, if it has four corners, it has to do tzitzis. But an old person who's dying, if they made him tachrichim, if they made him shrouds that has four corners, is potter from tzitzis. My time of why it says in the pasuk that something you cover with that you're going to use, I guess, now while you're alive, and it's a beged. In contrast to shrouds. And actually, from the fact that we live much the chasaba, there's a whole discussion in poskim if tzitzis, if a blanket needs tzitzis. Forget the discussion day or night. Assume that day means literally day and night means literally night. So even though it's a night garment, nevertheless, the fact that you sleep into the day hours, it would need tzitzis. But then is it a garment? But it's because the Torah used the word asher something you cover yourself, you wrap yourself with, could be that even if it's not a garment, even just a blanket, you'd be chayiv tzitzis. And so a few people, that they would basically round off one of the edges of the blanket so that you wouldn't be chayiv in tzitzis. Anyway, and by tachrichim, it's not there to be wearing it as clothes. But however, by he shaita, that moment when they bury him with the talis. They put a talis with tzitzis. Say we don't want to poke fun and antagonize. Those who are not to the impoverished, those who cannot do mitzvahs. But because there's a big machlekes and poskim, traces and brachas Daf Yuches over there, and also in Basha, the seventh parah, in the beginning there, in the exaggerations of. And has a whole discussion whether a mace should wear tzitzis, should not wear tzitzis. When Mashiach will come and be tchis mace, should come back wearing tzitzis? A big machlek. So that's why the meaning became: you bury him with tzitzis and then you cut it off, or you wrap in a towel and then you cut off the tzitzis, like the Gemara says over here. It doesn't mention cutting off. The Gemara just says that you bury him with a towel with tzitzis on. But the Rishonim, Teiser, Bechaim Kohen, they will talk about whether you remove the tzitzis or not. Saying about it further. We learned that it has to be on the corners. What's the definition of a corner? What's the definition of a corner? The definition of a corner to the end. Within 3 finger breadths to the end, the width of 3 fingers, that is the that whole section is called a kanaf. In fact, we don't want you to do it mamish at the end. We want you to do a little bit in. And we'll see later, we want you to go in beyond, we'll see tomorrow, beyond the width of a thumb. The width of a thumb away from the corner, but not more than 3 fingers away from the corner. So therefore we say as follows. Talis shenikra chud. If a talis is ripped beyond the 3 fingers from the corner, then yitfor, no problem, mend it, fix it. And we're not worried anything will go wrong because everybody knows you can't have tzitzis there. But toich shalosh, if we do it within the 3 fingers, loy yitfor, do not sew it up. Why? Because we're worried that you're going to use thread, and the extra thread that you're going to use to sew it up, you say, oh, it's right in the right place. I'll use these extra threads. That's tzitzis. But and these threads were not put on there l'shem mitzvah tzitzis, and therefore you are not yotzei. And we're only geyser if it's within the 3 fingers. But you're not allowed to sew it up. And in fact, we have a brayso supporting that. Talis shenikra that ripped, chutz shalosh outside of 3 yitfor, you can mend it, and torch shal within 3 the meidam la yitfor, you shouldn't, chomam yitfor, you should. Interesting. Moses says Tanya the Messiah and the whole Raish Rameir, who's a single opinion, versus the Chachamim. So where's the Messiah here? So some of us want to say you swap the names around, but others say that the halach is like Rameir b'gzei roisav. And even though Rameir is a lone opinion, if he makes a gzeira, we follow him. The one Erevin says that if you give him the Rameir was so smart that they decided they can't pass him like him because no one really fully understood what he was saying. He was way beyond everybody else's capacity to understand. And but Gzeiras we follow, and this is a Gzeira. And then it's everyone agrees. Don't bring a piece of cloth from another, let's say this talus, this you wear cotton or talus, going to be wearing ripped. So you bring an amma by nama because that's the minimum size for tzitzis, an amma by nama. There's a bachlek is a poskim when we say that it's an amma by nama. Doesn't have what happens? You're wearing tzitzis, but it folds up. It gets all mushed up. It's not lying flat. In the midst of tzitzis. That's why you see that some people wear a bendel, a little strap, a belt around the tzitzis to keep it always properly flat on your chest. It's always an amma by an amma. But so you're doing the mitzvah tzitzis. Anyway, you should not cut off an amma by an amma for another thing and just attach it to this beged here because it was not hung on the beged, the kanaf of this particular beged, and it has to be done l'shem the beged. This beged is on. That's why you can't do that. The Gemara. So for example, especially techelis, you want to take a techelis from another one and you put it on this one because it has to be a kanfei big day. You have to put it on.
We're losing the sound, I think.
Are you? Okay,
I can hear you now. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if it was just me or.
Yeah. No, there's a bit of scratchy internet.
Okay, you guys are not scratchy at all. Here, loud and clear. Can you hear me now better?
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
All good.
Okay. So the Gemara can continue. Vishavin also agree. Should maybe we have another talis cotton. You can unwind the tzitzis and the tchel, especially tchel. Remember, tchel is so expensive, and then put it onto a new talis cotton. That's not a problem because you're going to hang it on this talis cotton brand new, and you'll have the right cover on the mind. The tailor you're allowed to do that. Vavad provided shaloi tehemu seconds. They shouldn't be cut. They should be whole strings. And the obvious question is, isn't that obvious? So what's the point? Well, we learned before, so the Mephoshim said, we learned before that if you started out with the proper length string and then gardumin, then you frayed, you got cut off a bit, as long as you have a certain amount enough to make a bow, it's kosher. So the question is, you had tzitzis A, it was hanging there, everything started out proper. Transfer it to another beged, even though now it's gardumi, because these tzitzis started out a proper shear. And the answer is no, because it only works where it was. Now that you're starting, it's like you're starting from scratch. It's not a continuation of before. It's brand new, and brand new, it has to be the full shear. Shamat min Shaman, what do you learn from here? This impacts an argument between Rav and Shmuel. We had this in Gemara Shabbos in the second Perek, three machleksim, which we'll reiterate here. If you're permitted to remove the tzitzis from one beged to the next, and Rav says you cannot, and Shmuel says you could. Why does Rav say you cannot? The way Rashi learns, it's like a bezoyin. You're canceling one mitzvah. That's a bezoyin, canceling a mitzvah, and therefore you should. Tosis learns the reason why you shouldn't is because it's just like a mezuzah. If you're a tenant in a house and you're moving out, you're not permitted to remove the mezuzahs. Even though mezuzah is a chayv hadar, whoever lives in the house, a new person, a new tenant should come in and put their own mezuzah. And yet, we don't want you to take away your old mezuzah. Same thing here. We don't want you to take away the tzitzis from the old beged and put it on the new beged. And Shmuel will say, what are you comparing mezuzah to tzitzis? Mezuzah to do with protection. And if you remove the mezuzah, you've basically made the new tenants vulnerable. And if anything chasam happens to them, you're liable. Or you should be liable. And therefore, that's the laws of mezuzah. Nothing to do with tzitzis, and you can take it off. As Gemara said right here. From here, it was approved. You're allowed to remove from one beged to another. Question on Rav. And when I answer Dilma di Ibloi, Rav will agree that if the first beged rotted away and fell apart, so therefore there's no real mitzvah of tzitzis, that Rav will agree you can remove the tzitzis and put it on another beged so you can fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis. Tell me what we learned. Talis, a kulat chelis, a talis. Now, the way Rashi is going to learn the Gemara here, that when we learned before that konaf min konaf, that we learned before the material of the strings should be the same, the lavan should be the same as the beged itself, except we learned that the wool and linen are the only ones that you can put them on any beged. But if you have a cotton beged, it should have cotton strings. If you don't use wool, if you have a silk beged, you should have silk strings. If you don't use wool, or chelis and the lavan. So till now we learned that there has to be similar in material. Now we're going to add one more component. It has to be the same color as well. Even though we use the word lovin all the time, there's no mitzvah for the lovin to be white. It could be green. It could be red. It makes absolutely no difference. But it should be the same color as the beged. But the Torah does say is, I want you to have two colors. I want you to have hakonov, min konov, and I also want you to have siltchelis, blue. So you have to have two separate colors, green and blue, white and blue, whatever colors you want. That's what it should be. So says the Gemara, talis, whatever the entire talis is made out of blue. The beged itself is blue. What do? The tchelis will be blue. What about the lavan? You can't have the lavan blue as well because it will be one color. So you can't have kola ilan. Kola ilan is that sap that produces the same kind of dye as the chilazon. You can't have that because it's all one color. You can't do that. So it says, but I said, talis, you can use any color you want. In this case, you have no choice. The color is not going to be similar to the beged, but you have no choice. Chutz mikol ilan. I don't want you to call ilan because you need two colors. If you have kol ilan, it'll be one color, the beged and all the tzitzis. Meishel has a question. It says in the second brayse, talis ain't poitable amina. Talis, you should only have its own mean, its own color. Talis, you call it chelis. Maybe you bring chelis, but with also another color. With toilaba, and you hang on the other tzitzis as well. But the kol ilan layavi, don't bring the kol ilan. Same with third brayse. But then he adds the imhevi. But if you did bring the kol ilan, that kind of dye, and kosher is still kosher. Clearly argues with the first brayse. What's going on here? It's not an argument. Kan betalis bas arba chutin. Here we're talking about the talis is made up of 4 long strings that you fold it over. 2 of them are tchelis. And if you can have the other 2 color ilon, it's possible because it's all one color, and the Torah wants 2 colors. However, kan betalis bas shmeine chitin. If you have 8 strings and you fold them over, they become 16. So you have 4 of them, which are 2 tchelis and two let's say color ilon, and then you have another whole bunch of kol ilans that lechatchila shouldn't use it, but the evid it's all right. But the evid it's all right. Now, why lechatchila shouldn't you use it? And what's going on over here? So the pshat like that. The pshat like this, because we are worried. So what happened is you had 4 long strings of tchelis, and then you added 4 long strings of kol ilan, right? And now the lechatchila you shouldn't do it. But what's the but the Evid? Why would you say it's kosher, and why the Chatchila shouldn't do it? We're worried as follows: that what happens if somebody buys this talis? You have all these extra strings, and because you have all these extra strings, he's going to take it out and use it somewhere else. What happens if he takes out the 2 strings of kol ilan? What happens if he takes out the 2 things, 2 strings of kol ilan, superfluous, the extra ones, and he thinks that these are really tchelis? He'll put it on a talus of, let's say, he'll put it on a talus. He'll have 2 strings of linen. The lovon he decided to have linen, and then he'll have these 2 strings of kol ilan, thinking that it's actually wool, and that's tchelis. So what you have now is klayim. You have wool, but it's not tchelis. And when you have klayim, if it's not tchelis, you're doing an aver of klayim. When do we say suspend the laws of klayim? Is if you have the mitzvah of tchelis, which is blue wool and linen strings, and then we say even though it's klayim, it's permitted. But if the blue wool is not tchelis, it's only kol ilon, then it's mamish a case of what do you call it? A case of klayim. And that is our concern. That's the problem. Now, so now in this second brayso, we're talking about that you have 2 tchelis and 2 white strings. So 2 colors, as far as 2 colors are concerned, it's all right. The problem is you have another extra 4 strings folded over, and there the problem is kol ilan, and the gzeira is something totally extraneous to this whole thing about you'll sell it or you'll use it for another talis and all that. That's why the chatchili shouldn't do, but the evidence kosher. Now, this is the basis for a big argument in the poskim. If you have a chance to learn the first tesis on this parak, long tesis, but tesis brings fascinating arguments. There are poskim that say that that when we say 2, 4, and all that, let's say we talk about 4 strings, that means 2 folded over, and 8 strings means 4 folded over. In other words, they say that maybe you don't need 4 strings for tzitzis. Maybe all you need is 2. You need 2, let's say you need 2 white and 2 tchelis. There's no tchelis, just have 2 white. And it's kosher. You don't need anything more than that. You need only 2 strings and nothing more, the very first tesis. So when the Mishnah said that tchelis is not ma'akiv, because they compare them, if you remember the Mishnah said that tefillin shel is not ma'akiv sharosh, sharosh is not ma'akiv shel yad. What do you mean over there? It means you only have one. Where's the head? And you don't have the head. They say the same thing. The mitzvah tzitzis. 2 white and 2 blue. We don't have tchelis today. All you need is 2 white. That's all. And they learned the whole Gemara that way. And the way we learn is that you need 4 tzitzis, and then you fold it over, come 8. Others learn differently. They don't need 4. You only need 2. And they learn from the word gedilim. When the Torah says, gedilim, absul tchelis, and so on. Gedilim, you need 2, which is 4 folded over. That's talking about the white. Tchelis, the blue, that's separate. Then furthermore, tchelis itself. How many strings have to be tchelis? There are 3 opinions. The Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam hold clearly half of the tchelis and half of them are white. And we know one string is tchelis out of the 4. The Ravid holds the entire length of the 1 string, so that's basically 2 after it's folded, and there is only 1 string out of the 8. Half of one of the long ones is tchelis. And then they argue about how you do the chulias, where the tchelis comes in. Lots of opinions. And then Tesa says something very interesting. based on the Gemara right here. You're allowed to have more than 8 strings. You can have 16 strings. Because, as Gemara says right here, we'll see Gemara later, tomorrow. You can have more strings. And or right here, you see, we learned more. You can have more strings. We learned yesterday in Gemara, Hitil ala mutelis. We learned yesterday in Gemara that if you have tzitzis and then you add another set of tzitzis, that's like Baltaisiv, and the argument there, Rabbi and Rapapa, that you can't have more than 4 strings. So Taisa says, no. It depends. Taisa says, if you wound up 8 long strings, which folds into 16, and you make it one chulin, one set of braids and all that, it's 100% kosher. Because the Torah doesn't give you any maximum how many strings. The Gemara there is talking about is you made normal tzitzis, 4 tzitzis, you fold it over, and then you try to make another set. That is a problem. That's called hitil and mutelis. But otherwise, so the Gemara is very unclear in all of these dinim how many you need. But we'll have a very interesting discussion in a minute between Sham and Basil. The Gemara says further. Sorry, I forgot it. I just lost the place. Yeah. So the Gemara says, Itma we learned. Rav Amas, what's the argument Rav Shmuel? Rav says, Ein matidi mebeg lebeg. You're not allowed to unwind tzitzis from one beged and put it onto another, like mezuzah or kos bezoin. Shmuel says, matidin mebeg lebeg. You can. Rav Amar, Ein madlikim menel Chanukah. You cannot light from one candle directly to the next candle. You have to use a shamish, and because it's bezoin of the mitzvah. And Shmuel says, madlikim menel. You can light from one candle to the next, because since it's all a mitzvah, it's not a bezoin. Rav says, "Ein halacha kerab Shimon," the famous argument in Hilchos Shabbos. A dover shemus kavan, something which is unintentional. I pull a chair on the ground, I make ridges in the ground. If it's a heavy chair, that's called a psikresha. It's inevitable. You cut the head off and won't die. Then, of course, you're chayiv. But it's not a psikresha. It just turned out to be that it made ridges in the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says you're chayiv. Dover shemus kavan, intentionally chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda says you are potter. Ironic that the classical case of Dover Shemus Kavan is somebody drags a chair or goiter, when the Gemara and Rashi says in another parak in Masechta Shabbos that if you drag a chair and you make holes in the ground, you're only chayiv midrabanan, even if it's intentional, it's deliberate, only midrabanan, because it's not the normal conventional way of digging holes in the ground. And yet we use that as an example that you know why it's mutter, because Dover Shemus Kavan, and this is the Melacha Lechatchila of the whole East is only the Rabbanan. Interesting. Anyway, the Gemara continues. Rab says, "Allah not Rab Shimon begreda." No, Dover Shemus Kavan should be chayiv like we would do. Shmuel says, "Allah Rab Shimon begreda." Omar Abai says, "Abai, Kol mil demar over kirab." My teacher Rabba always followed Rab when it comes to Isurim. Not like Shmuel. Shmuel we paskin when it comes to her laws of Choshen Mishpat, laws of commerce and all that, and when it comes to Isurim. But in these cases, my Rebbe followed Rabbi Shmuel. The barman is last over Shmuel. Tidin first he paskin mati beg from one can to the next, and va'alocha ki Rab Shimon begraded. The loch Rab Shimon. Then we learned. Rab Shimon says, "Goyed other midday kiss." It's actually allowed to drag a chair or a stool, a bed, a chair, and a bench. Ubavachla is kavan last as long as it's unintentional that you want to make a ridge in the ground. Rabbi Yehuda now. We talked about, remember, tchelis is very expensive. Chilazon is a rarity. It raised its head, whatever it was, a worm or a fish, Agmir, Rashi, Rambam, and all the poskim and everything else. We'll see later in the tomorrow. Or a snail. What do you call it? It's very expensive. So the question is, we have a rule in Morah Avodah Zarah, we had all these different, you need 2 seals or 1 seal. When it comes to sending meat to somebody, you make sure that nobody cheats or come wine and these things. So the question is, when it comes to tzitzis, are we worried that if you gave it to a guy, they're going to cut off the tchelis and put in the dye, the kol ilan in his place? So we have different behaviors. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda gave it to cleaners. He wasn't suspicious at all. Rabbi Chanina was slightly suspicious. Ovidle Sisa. What he did was he sort of made it into a bowl, so it was a big job for someone to unravel it and to change it. It was a big tircha, they won't do it. And Ravina Chait Lamech, Ravina didn't trust him at all. So what he did was he would take the corner of the beged and put the tzitzis inside, fold it, and then fold the bottom of the beged over that and sew it up. And it'll be immediately recognizable if somebody tampered with it. We learned. It's interesting that machlek is such a fundamental machlek is b'sham b'sil, and we all follow b'shamay. How many strings should you have? B'shamay says 4, and fold it over. B'sil says gimel 3. Shammai says 4 because it says gedil, which already means braided. That's 2, and gedilim in plural. That's 4. And then because it doesn't say you, it says to use this, so therefore it says double that. So that's how we have 8. 4 becomes 8. The kama tehem is sholeshes, and Beis Hillel says 3 because he says gedilim is 2, and then psil tchelis is 1. That's 3. The kama tehem is sholeshes. So how much should be sticking out? That's how Rashi learns. Rabbeinu Tam says, how long should the braid be? Now, we learned before already that the onuf, that which sticks out, should be double the size of the braids. So it's very important to know what we're talking about over here. What's the minimum size? So Shammai says, Dalet, 4 fingers. So if it's like Rashi learns, we're talking about the strings hanging down, the 4 fingers, that means the chulya should be the width of fingers. That means from the beginning of your tzitzis, from the corner, down to the end of the strings, the minimum shear should be 6 fingers, the width of 6 fingers. Not much, and according to Taisus, we're talking about the chuliyas. The chuliyas are 4, which and the strings have to be 8, so a total of 12, and that's how we follow Rabbeinu Tam. Minimum length of the string should be 12 fingers. With Beis Hillel says gimel, only 3, only the width of 3 fingers be the levitus or the chuliyas. The gimel should Beis Hillel. I mean, when we say 3. Because a tefach can be measured in different ways, different things. We'll see. To measure a tefach, if you use, as Gemara will say in a minute, if you use the thumb, it's 4 fingers. If you use the pinky, it's 6 fingers. If you use the middle of the index finger, it's 5. So when he said, Hill said 3 fingers, he meant 3 fingers of the thumb, the size of the thumb. That's the minimum length of the tzitzis. I'm going to pop a tefach that I said could be dalabigul. 4 thumbs, shis bektana, 6 pinkies, a chambis and 5 index and middle finger. Instead of dalid, this is the halacha. Dalid, you need 4 strings folded over. Dalid, but I disagree with other ones, and I say it could be within 4 fingers of the edge of the talis. Shaleshes, and we should hang down dalid 4 fingers. Again, 4 breasts like Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yehuda says no. I follow Beis Gimel. You only need 3 strings. The gimel, but on the other hand, I hold it should be within 3 fingers of the edge of the talus. Mishaleshes gimel, it should only hang down 3. Amar Papa represents what's the final halacha? Dalad is 4 strings. The torch shalaba should be within 3 fingers of the end of the talus. Mishaleshes arba should hang down 4. Remember, so coming out from all of this, the East Shiura is a minimum size of a talus of tzitzis. But I mean, as a question, we learned tzitzis ain't tzitzis. The word tzitzis means sticking out, protruding. The ain't tzitzis elamash. The Brisa clearly says how much should it protrude by? The slightest amount. The elders of Beis Shammai and the elders of Beis Hillel went to the attic of Bemseda, of Yechem Bemseda. But Amru, they said tzitzis ain't l'shir. They ruled that tzitzis there's no minimum. That's how we understood now. Ukiyet, but similar, they ruled that lulav ain't b'shir. Lulav has no minimum either. My lab, what do you mean no minimum? Ain't lo shir klal. There's no minimum. Question, you just have this whole argument: 3 fingers, 4 fingers. Say no. Ain't lo shir l'mayla. There's no maximum. But yes, lo shir l'mata, but definitely is a minimum. And I'll prove it to you. Kodila temach not so. It says in the same brayso, lulav ain't lo shir. Lulav has no shir. Hachinami lo shir. Lulav has no shir. Klal. But now we learned lulav should be talking to the neighbor because lulav has a minimum of 3 tefachim, so you're able to shake it. Ella ain't lo shir l'mayla. There's no maximum. Yesh loy shilamata, definitely lulav has a minimum 3 tvachim. Hachinami ein loy shilamayla is no maximum. Yesh loy shilamata, tzitzis has no maximum, but definitely has a minimum. Okay, we'll stop over here and have a good Vach Shavua Tov, everybody.